Hello, everyone. Welcome to Developing Palates. I'm Aaron Loomis coming to you from the Drew Estate studio. With me today is Seth Geis. How you doing, Seth?
Doing well, man. It's great to be here. It's great to be here.
Fantastic for you joining us here. So today we are doing Pour and Tell. We're doing a pairing edition. We have two fantastic items to pair together. The first is the Russell Reserve Corona Cigar Private Barrel Selection Pick. And we are smoking Montecristo today. We're gonna have some great conversations about these products and some of the people behind them. So without further ado, I will introduce our special guests for this evening. I'm first going to introduce Mr. Bruce Russell from Russell Reserve and Wild Turkey. Bruce, how are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you all?
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, of course. I'm excited to learn a little bit about the cigars, too.
There you go. And from Altadis U.S.A., we have Rafael Nodal and Tim Person. How you guys doing today?
Good, good. How are you tonight?
Fantastic.
Doing very good. Thank you for having us here. Fantastic evening to be able to drink, smoke, and talk to friends.
Absolutely. And the coordinator extraordinaire, Mr. Jeff Borysiewicz from Corona Cigar Company. How you doing, Jeff?
Fantastic. Aaron, Seth, thanks for putting this on again. We love to share our knowledge and our resources when it comes to fantastic whiskey and cigars. And I think we put together a nice little package here for tonight.
Yeah, so let's talk about the package first. We'll kind of mix it up how we usually do these shows. So Tim and Jeff, you guys can both chime in on this. So
Sure.
explain what this package looks like with the Russell Reserve and the Montecristo Espadas.
Okay,
Tim,
well,
go
for
ahead.
the, okay, sure. So we're doing a special selection and pairing with the Russell's Reserve single barrel, Corona only. It was a single barrel picked by Jeff and his staff. So this kind of gave him an idea of something that I had done with Jeff before. So we do, for a great price of $159, you get a Montecristo from Corona and Wild Turkey and Russell's Reserve, and a Montecristo Espada or Espada Oscuro. I think, Aaron, you're smoking the regular Espada. I'm smoking the Oscuro
Yep.
myself. So it's a great package. Regular retail value ranges from anywhere from $250 to $275, and Corona is doing it tonight for $159. So it's an unbelievable pairing. I paired it a couple of times over the last week, so it's been doing pretty good. You have to excuse my voice. But it's an unbelievable deal. I mean, anyone who knows anything about this will definitely jump on it.
So real quick, what I just wanted to bring up was that, since COVID and literally we just got the okay in Florida for the bars to be open.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a long dry period where we haven't been able to have these events in our stores, whether it's cigar events or whether it's whiskey events where we have the distillers come in and do tasting. So this is why we've been putting these things together and trying to at least replicate what we would do if we're in the shop. So that's why we have it here tonight. And just to let you know, like, that's the lighter and cutter set from Montecristo. So
Yep,
these are the kind of
very
things
nice.
that we would get if we had an event in the store. And so we'll have at it and learn all about the great whiskey we're having and then the cigars that we're smoking.
That's right. And I posted the link to the deal in the chat on the show, so people can check that out right now if they're watching live. So
Awesome.
all right. So to start it off, I want to talk to you first, Bruce. What we like to do is we kind of like to get a little bit of a background on the company. And I know you come from a long lineage of people from this brand. So, and I'll kind of leave it up to you how you want to frame it. If you want to just kind of focus on the Russell's Reserve brand, or if you want to kind of do the entire kind of scope with Wild Turkey. So if you can give us a little synopsis of the brand's history.
Yeah, sure thing. I'll do what I typically do. I'll start off with Wild Turkey because it's
Okay.
where it all starts. And then I'll kind of brush past that and quickly get to the Russells. But Wild Turkey's been around for a very long time, at least as a distillery, as a recipe. Wild Turkey itself came a little bit later on than the advent of our distillery operation.
Mm-hmm.
We've been making whiskey on our site since the 1860s. We made really good whiskey during that time, a lot of different brands. Wild Turkey doesn't come around, though, until right around 1940. How kind of the Wild Turkey operation and how our distillery became a big deal. There was a guy at that time that owned this company called the Austin Nichols Company. You can still see that name on some of our bottles today, or you can see the A&N on some of the bottles. There's a man named Tom McCarthy, and him and a bunch of other industry folks that were in the alcohol industry used to go on this hunting trip every year. We always say hunting trip in quotations because I don't think there were ever any turkeys killed. It was just an excuse to get away and drink and smoke and gamble and having a guy's trip. And they went to the Carolinas every year on this wild turkey hunting trip. Well, in 1940, it was Tom's turn to bring the booze. He came to our distillery. He took some out of a barrel. We didn't know what it was. He didn't know what it was. He was just our biggest consumer, our biggest client at that time, excuse us, because he owned a wholesale grocery operation and would distribute to grocery chains out through New York. Well, over that week, they thought Tom's whiskey that he brought was the best that they'd ever had. It turned into an inside joke, their wild turkey whiskey. Tom was wealthy enough to turn that inside joke into a brand, and that's what he did. He went back to the distillery. He checked the stats. The specifics on that whiskey was an 8-year-old whiskey, which was twice as old as the normal whiskey at that time. It was 101 proof, which was an unusual proof. And so he released, as kind of his thing, a 101 8-year-old wild turkey product. It saw its first kind of big national release in 1942, just a couple years after that trip, spurred the idea, and wild turkey blew up from there. It doubled in size for the next decade or so until it became kind of a national thing. And then that's what my family has done for now 3 generations making it, 4 generations working there. My grandfather got started kind of right after that in the early to mid 1950s. He started in 1954 as a 19-year-old. He had aspirations to play professional baseball, but he didn't make as much money doing that as he did working in the factory. So he went and got a factory job, and my grandma told him he needed to get a real job. And because she worked at the distillery as a secretary before he worked there. That's kind of how he had his in. And then he started in 1954 and hasn't left. He's now been there 66 years. Wow. He's the longest tenured distiller in history of spirits.
Wow.
Because at this point, me and everybody in my family always say he's pickled. He's had so much booze that he's kind of immortal. He's not going anywhere. Right. He's definitely not retired. And to take that farther, Russell's came about for his first of his like 2 or 3 fake retirements he's had. So he's been making it since 1954. He actually learned from a man named Bill Hughes who made whiskey pre-prohibition. The master distiller at our distillery they've all been pretty longly tenured. So my dad was named master distiller, just 5 years ago. And he's only the 4th master distiller we've had since 1865.
Wow.
So we haven't had that many. But Jimmy started to, he was even old 15 years ago as a distiller, at least. And it was probably about, 20 years ago. It was around his 45th anniversary. We were owned at that time by Pernod Ricard, and they were going to throw this retirement party for him. And what he does, he's done this 3 times, and I always tell him he's a jerk for doing it because everybody gets really upset. We've had different governors come in and write him into legislature. We've had every master distiller that was alive at the time. They come in, they cry, they hug, they're sad Jimmy's leaving. And then Jimmy just shows up to work on Monday, my granddad. But the first time he did it was when Russell's became a thing. My dad was an associate distiller. He was not a master distiller or anything at the time. He was scared to death, I think, to take on the project. But they told him, we think your dad's going to retire, and we need you to make something for him. Right. And that's how Russell's became Russell. So what Dad did is he went to the warehouse and found what my granddad was drinking. Every distiller has these things called sugar barrels or honey barrels. Barrels so sweet, so good that we don't necessarily keep them for ourselves, but we know where they're at.
Right.
And then how you taste stuff at Wild Turkey is you just get a power drill, just like you would get at Walmart or Lowe's or wherever else. You drill small holes in the side of the barrel, 2 of them, one to let the air pressure and then one below the fill line. You get your fill, and then you tap what kind of looks like a little golf tee into the barrel to stop it up. Well, they're only supposed to be tasted once every 2 years. That's the rule at Wild Turkey. Well, we found barrels with up to, 50, 60 plugs or places inside of them. And we don't have any 120-year-old whiskey. So we knew, this is the stuff that Granddad's into at the time. And it was unusual because he's always been known for being like super in your face, high proof, aggressive whiskey, stuff like Rare Breed. And this was a little bit older. It was 10, 11, and 12-year-old whiskey. It had a different kind of flavor profile. It was sweeter. It was more honey, vanilla than that kind of like sweet tobacco earthiness that you get in a lot of Wild Turkey products. It had more of a subtle kind of flavor profile too. It just wasn't over the top aggressive heat. It wasn't over the top sweetness. There's some fruitiness. There's some earthiness. There's some floral notes. There's some sweetness. There's a lot of everything in Russell's. Well, Dad blended those barrels together and tricked my granddad and told him we're going to release a specialty product for Japan. So my granddad was tasting it along the way that he was developing it. Yeah. He loved it, of course, when it came out. And then it's still the only thing that my dad's ever made that my granddad like had all nice things to say about it. Because he thinks all my dad's whiskey's way too old.
Okay.
And then
That's
Russell
awesome,
actually brought it with me tonight. There's not too many of these out there in the world anymore. This was the original bottling of Russell's Reserve.
Oh, wow.
You can tell it was not supposed to be a permanent product. It was just for his retirement. It's in the 101 bottle. It's a really cheap, like screen printed essentially label there. And then this was only around a couple years. You know, it was released during his retirement party and then had a couple other like small releases.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what caused them to want to commit to the Russell's brand, but I'm glad they did, because what Russell's allows us to do, it allows us to give the consumer the chance to try the barrels that we're into. Wild Turkey has been around as a distillery and as a recipe before us. We're just trying to continue on the legacy, that my granddad learned from Bill Hughes. But Russell's is kind of our chance to let you all try the barrels that we think are good, that we think are cool at the distillery at the time. And the single barrel that you all have got is kind of the perfect example of that. How we do the single barrel process at Wild Turkey on Russell's is the same with all the other Wild Turkey stuff. There's a team of folks, 5 or 6 folks to get to try these. They're graded 1 to 5. It's like an unwritten rule at Wild Turkey, though. You're not allowed to write 5 on anything because my granddad gets mad.
We have the same rule. We have the same rule developing palates.
Perfect whiskey. Yeah. So 4 or 5 is the highest. It has to meet a certain grade from everybody to get into the single barrel program. And then the single barrels are kind of sorted from there as, does this taste like Kentucky Spirit, which is a Wild Turkey product? Does this taste more like a Russell's Reserve single barrel? And then what me and Dad like to see are barrels that make those grades, but the notes are that they're off profile. So we're very concerned with consistency when it comes to retail bottles, but we want to find the coolest, strangest, most off the wall, most delicious stuff for the private barrel program, which is what you guys are drinking on tonight. It's something that, while I think our retail product is awesome, we want to be able to give you all the chance to drink something that does not taste just like normal Wild Turkey, whether that be because it's a little sweeter, a little smokier, a little earthier, a little bit more floral. Every barrel is going to be different because it's going to depend on who's picking it out. The barrel that you all are trying tonight, last year's Corona barrel, was a Camp Nelson Warehouse F. It's actually one of the warehouses offsite of the main distillery location that we use. It's the most consistent private barrel warehouse that we've ever had in the program. 9 out of 10 of the Camp Nelson Warehouse F barrels are they're bangers. They're insanely good. They're delicious. The one you all have got coming this year, though, I'm even more excited about because it's a Camp Nelson, or it's a Tyrone Warehouse S. It's the first year ever that Warehouse S, because once you get to the end of the alphabet, those are newer warehouses, so the whiskey's usually not that old. The stuff in S is finally old enough to be in the program. And that warehouse, because of the way it's built and where it's at on the vicinity, it gets a lot hotter than a lot of our other warehouses, an average temperature. And Warehouse S has a very unusual kind of fresh wood note in a lot of them. I think is super tasty. It's just super unusual compared to most other Wild Turkey. So I'm really excited for y'all to get your single barrel this year.
Yes. Well, I'm excited to hear that. So the whiskey that we're tasting now, we selected that with your dad. So Eddie and Tommy. So Eddie Russell and Tommy and Angel and myself from Corona, we went up there and picked these barrels. And in my opinion, what I like them is kind of medium spice, but higher on the caramels, a little more sweeter, and very balanced. And so that's what we picked out, and it just always looking for how it pairs with a cigar. Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you, one of the coolest things though, your grandfather came, man, when we first did our first barrel pick, he was in Orlando, and he celebrated his 80th birthday at our downtown store. We got him a cake.
Wow.
And
Nice.
he was all happy. We got him a cake.
Friend forever, because he's a big sweets guy.
So listen to this, right? So when we were there last year, just like you had said, your grandfather, he's 86 now, right? And so we go down to the visitor center, and sure enough, man, he's rolled up in his truck, and he's out there in front, sitting on the bar stool, talking to customers as they walk in. And personally, I think that's one of the coolest experiences when people go to do the distillery tours, is that your grandfather's there, because he's a walking history book, and he's such a sweet man. You know what I mean? He's just got that gentle giant type of personality, and it's a real treat to have him there. And we share a few stories about tobacco, because he talks about how he never wants to work in a tobacco field or farm ever again. So most of the guys in Kentucky back in that era worked in tobacco fields, so as a summer job to make a little money. But yeah, it's great. It's great having him at the distillery, and we miss him on the road, and we'll cherish the time that he was able to go out and visit retailers and bars and customers.
One of the biggest things I've ever took from him, it's a motto that he lives by, and it's, we've always got time. Yes. And he'll say that about me and Dad, even if we don't want to say it. But what he means by that is, I think in his mind, he thinks, we're just some country people from Orangeburg that got really lucky to be in the position we are. And he feels very blessed, and he feels the love when he travels around. So he always has time for somebody, whether it be a bar owner or just a guy that came to get his bottle signed at a liquor store. I've seen him stay hours after, talking with people. And we see a lot of people that come to the distillery that have met him on the road. And, it's not your typical, a lot of times, like, it was nice to see you the last time I was down somewhere. Jimmy always knows, like, their kids' names. He knows, what they were going through when you met them last time. He knows their favorite food, or he always picks up on somebody and remembers them and makes people feel special. And he's one of a kind. He really is.
Well, to back up your story there, he pulled out his cell phone, right? Opens up his album, goes back to it, and shows the picture of him blowing out the candles at the store. So, I mean, he's got a memory. Yeah, it was pretty cool. So God bless him, and hopefully he'll celebrate his 90th birthday at the distillery and have 3 or 4 more retirement parties.
There you go.
I'm sure he will.
All right, let's turn it over to the Montecristo side. So Rafael and Tim, if you want to kind of chime in, give us. I mean, Montecristo is this iconic brand in the cigar world. I mean, it's hard to get bigger than Montecristo, right? So can you give us a little bit of history and the background of Montecristo and how it's gotten to the point where it is today?
Right. So Montecristo is actually celebrating this year the 85th anniversary. It started in Cuba in 1935. So it's an iconic brand. It's actually one of the most recognizable brand in the cigar brand in the world, and actually our flagship here in the United States. So when we decided to come up with Espada, it's actually before my time, the Grupo de Maestro team up with, we don't have a factory in Nicaragua, so we have a factory. Altadis U.S.A. has a factory in Dominican Republic, which is now the largest cigar factory in the world in La Romana, and also in Honduras, a fantastic big factory in Flor de Copan in Santa Rosa de Copan. 2 amazing factories. However, we don't have a factory in Nicaragua, so our Grupo de Maestros team up with an amazing family, the Plasencia family, which, by the way, it reminds me, of Bruce's story of his grandfather, and I think because there's a lot of similarities, right, on the people on the tobacco side, right?
Yes.
And even though his Bruce's grandfather started the tobacco, because in Kentucky at the time, like Jeff says, a lot of people work on the summer, right, on the tobacco. But the tobacco families, the traditional tobacco families, has that. You got the grandfather, you got the father, you got the kids working out. So we team out, the Grupo de Maestro work with a blend with the tobaccos from Nicaragua, of the Plasencia family, who has been over 150 years growing tobacco and now making cigars in Nicaragua and Honduras. So that was the first time that a Montecristo was done in Nicaragua. And then later on, last year, I was given the opportunity, and by the way, it's huge responsibility when you're blending a cigar for an iconic brand like Montecristo, because all this history and all this what the brand represents. You don't want to disappoint, right? So it's definitely a responsibility that I take very serious. So we work again with the Grupo de Maestros and the Plasencia family to come up with an Oscuro or Maduro Oscuro version of that. The one that you have in Aaron tonight is the Espada, the original one, yep. Which has a very nice golden Habano wrapper. Exactly. So I'm smoking, as Tim mentioned, we're smoking the Oscuro. Jeff, which one are you smoking? The Oscuro as well, right? You have both there.
Yeah, I've got the Oscuro going first.
The Oscuro. And so on this one, I have to tell you, we work in so many blends, but at the end, we pick the same blend inside that the original Espada, but we use a different wrapper. We use a Ligero wrapper. And I don't have to tell you, the Ligero comes from the top part of the plant, and it's very strong. So it requires a lot of fermentation. And always the difficulty with that is to make sure that it burns, that the combustion is there, because it's such a amount of juices and it's very difficult to burn well, but it gives you a tremendous amount of flavor. So that combination, that original blend, and if you try both, you'll see the huge difference that the Ligero wrapper brings. And this is a triple fermented one. So basically we work on the fermentation again and again and again until we got something, very dark, but also that it burns very well. So the result is a very flavorful cigar with a lot of complexity and a lot of different tones, which I was surprised. I tested it yesterday for the first time, the Russell Reserve single barrel, as you guys are doing. And part of my job is doing this testing. So last night, when I finished right here from my backyard studios, so Jeff is showing right now. Jeff is showing. Jeff, you can talk there. So the camera. So
this is the natural wrapper. I'm getting ready to fire that up and smoke them side by side.
Yes, and it's an amazing one. So I'm having the Oscuro. The difference on the packaging is a beautiful packaging with some leather on the side, and this one is dark, obviously, to represent what the brand is. But these both, last night I tried both with the Russell Reserve, and when you are doing pairing and you are drinking, the idea is that you don't want the drink, the liquor to overpower the cigar, or vice versa. And I think this goes extremely well. I am a rum drinker. I come from Cuba, so tobacco, coffee, and rum seems to be what the kids drink and at home. But thanks to Jeff and my friend Tim, they have expanded. They have been expanding my horizon. And obviously, I was mentioning before the show, before going live, that the COVID situation has helped, because I really had the chance to do a lot of this and try different things. And this is an amazing pairing, right? So I think Jeff and Tim and Bruce, you guys did a fantastic job of picking the right one, because the idea is not to sell something. The idea is to enhance the moment, right? Because at the end of the day, listen, what we on the cigar world are doing, which is very similar to what Bruce was saying about the Russell family, we are providing moments to the consumer. And we are trying to do everything we can to enhance those moments. So that pairing, I'll tell you, I think it's a winner in my book. That's for sure.
So well, Rafael, Real quick, you know why you don't you weren't really a bourbon drinker?
I wasn't, but I do
No,
have a
but
lot of friends
I'll
from
tell you
Kentucky,
why.
which have been.
You can't get bourbon in Cuba.
Well, but maybe even from before, right? So even from before the revolution, before of that, the rum was always something that you get on the corner, right? Because from the sugar cane, you get it, right? So, but I have to tell you, since Jeff and Tim has been expanding my horizon, I feel that I am a better consumer now, more informed, because I have expanded my horizon. I've been able to get the right flavors with the pairings.
Well, I'll say this.
Rafael, or Tim, I was going to say, I'm going to try and work on do everything I can. Let's see if we can end the embargo, and we'll try and get where they can get bourbon, American bourbon down in Cuba, and then we'll get some Cuban cigars for sale here.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that will be a win-win for everybody that loves cigars and love good drinks, right? Because this is amazing.
The one thing, I don't know how you couldn't open up with a bottle of bourbon. You bring down a bottle of bourbon, I mean, bourbon, coffee, and tobacco, that's a balanced diet right there. That's how you stay healthy.
Well,
Absolutely.
if you travel to Cuba, just take one of these nice bottles of Russell Reserve, and I'm sure one of those ladies at the Casa de Habanos will probably give you a 150-year-old bottle of Havana Club for a bottle of this Russell's Reserve.
Oh yeah.
I agree. I've never been back to Cuba, by the way. I never been back to Cuba. I left in 1980. I had never been back, so hopefully when I do one day, I will make a promise to Jeff, to Aaron, to Tim, and Seth, and Russell. Bruce, I will take one bottle there the first trip I take.
There you go.
Bruce,
Well,
you talked about Camp Nelson being it's in a great location, and it stays warm. Are there certain locations which are ideal for storage of barrels?
Yeah, I think every distillery has what they would call their honey holes. We kind of know year in, year out, certain warehouses and certain floors in those warehouses just have more consistent stuff than the other ones. The thing about bourbon that I'm sure affects tobacco too, because Mother Nature has so much to do with it, even though we might have a place that usually has the best stuff, it's never always the case. But yeah, if you ask any distiller, they always have their favorite spots. Mine's Warehouse B. Dad's is Warehouse G. But Camp Nelson F has probably been the fan favorite for the past 2 years. We were scared to death because 2 years ago was the first time that we'd ever put Camp Nelson stuff out there as single barrel products. And you really never know how consumers are gonna, how they're gonna respond to something. But Camp Nelson F for sure was the big winner in the past couple of years of single barrels. We had Camp Nelson A along with it. And, you know, they're sister warehouses. They're built the same. They sit in the same exact field, just, you know, hundreds of yards apart from one another. And Camp Nelson A, you know, maybe one person out of every 10 picked that, and 9 out of 10 picked Camp Nelson F.
So yours is Warehouse B.
B, yeah.
And is that a Camp Nelson, or where's?
No, it's at Tyrone. Our actual location is in a place called Tyrone, Kentucky.
Okay.
Because the two guys that started our distillery operation were two brothers who came from Tyrone, Ireland, and then settled in that spot.
Okay.
And then they had the most money, so they got to name the town, I guess. But Tyrone B, I really like because A and B both age a little bit unusually compared to everywhere else. They're the only like original warehouses still left. They were both built in the early 1890s. They're smaller, they're way more compact. They don't have as much airflow, and so stuff picks up some interesting notes. I don't think that A is as good as B because A is where we do our single barrel program, also where we take tours through. And even though I don't think it makes a huge difference, just having the doors open and shut that much, having people in there, it affects the barrel somewhat because it changes the temperature, it changes the airflow. So I think B is a little bit better.
Well, I have to tell you, Bruce, here, looking at the comments here on the Facebook Live, Thomas said that warehouses B, D, and M are how the consumer, right? They follow these and they are on top of that. That's an amazing. It's very similar, right, to the cigar, right? It's such an important part. You mentioned in the tobacco houses when we take out the tobacco from the plants, and the first part they go is on the tobacco houses, and opening and closing and the temperature versus the humidity, that has an impact as well. That's for sure.
Well,
Bruce.
Rafael, the guy that posted that is a little biased. I just want to say that. What do you think, Jeff?
That's all you're gonna say?
That's Tommy from the Davidoff store in Tampa that we have, and Tommy is a bourbon fanatic. So I don't know, when Tommy first started with all the bourbon single barrels, he always liked them a lot hotter. So whenever we select the barrels, it's usually myself, Tommy, Angel, Matt, and anybody else that happens to be in the office. And I always like them a little more with more of the caramel notes to it. And Tommy used to like them with the spice. But I know that he's mellowed out with some time here. So I don't know if those warehouses are what you would call hot, mean hot as in spicy, or if they're more middle of the road on the spice.
Well, I will tell you, Jeff, Tommy is one of the best guys. I mean, you know, I travel a lot like Rafael does. Tommy, I will say hands down, is one of the best guys that I know that could put a person, if he knows what they smoke, with a drink. I mean, and I'm not just saying that because he's a good friend of mine, but he's unbelievable how he can pair those together.
Very true.
The fact that he knows the warehouses. Now, Bruce, Aaron and I are two of the four. There's also June and John who are with us, and they are more of the whiskey nerds. But Aaron and I are the actual drinkers.
Yeah.
So we're we're the ones that really matter. They're just nerds. You just spend 5 minutes and then ignore them. But I mean, Jeff, this is like got caramel and honey notes, and it's fruity. It's really good.
That's what we look for. And so we just try to make sure that they're very approachable, because when, we serve all these things either neat or on the rocks, and you just don't want people to be, overpowered. And it's very approachable for a lot of people. Bruce, quick question. How did you guys come up with that name for where there's warehouses? Was that a camp, like a hunting camp at one time, or how to come up with that name?
Camp Nelson's actually an old military camp.
Nice.
Kentucky is one of those places that a lot of the famous forts that a lot of people have heard of, like Fort Knox. There's we have a lot of military here because we have so much land and not that many people that live, I guess. We only have a little over 4 million people in our whole state. And Camp Nelson was one of those. It's now defunct. And when it went defunct, somebody bought up that land and put an old distillery on it. That distillery also went bankrupt when a lot of other ones did, I think, in the 70s and 80s. And then we bought up the land and then bought those warehouses. So we have 6 warehouses that sit on a big open field. They have a lot of space in between them. There's no trees. It's not in the valley. It just gets a lot of wind circulation, a lot of air. That's really good for those barrels because we find that a dry, airy place with a lot of temperature variation is what's best for our whiskey. And you get a lot of that at Camp Nelson. Where in Tyrone, there weren't really the same regulations when we started to build the warehouses and the distillery back in the day. So a lot of those buildings are right next to each other. You're not allowed to do that legally anymore. You have to build them so far apart and build basically trenches or berms around them to keep from, fire safety and stuff like that. But those warehouses that are close together, they age stuff a little bit differently too. But something about those Camp Nelson barrels here in the last couple of years, they've been so sweet. Some of them are almost like candy. They're just so easy to drink. It's hard to find that.
Bruce, how close is Camp Nelson to the distillery?
It's about 45 miles away. If anybody's ever been to Kentucky, there's only 2 places anybody ever knows, Lexington and Louisville. We're in the middle is where our distillery's at.
You're near Lawrenceburg or Frankfurt or?
Lawrenceburg, yeah.
Lawrenceburg, okay.
Just south of Frankfurt. And then Camp Nelson's on the other side of Lexington, so about 45 miles away.
Well, I mean, if that answers the question on why the military base went defunct. If you're that close to the distillery, I mean, That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
I'm sure their
I mean,
morale was kept pretty high. Yeah.
oh yeah, they had
Yeah.
great morale until they're the ones who probably mutinied, then they started their own distill, and then they went out of business on that. That's probably
Yeah, or driving the trucks drunk around town. But so one of the things that, like in Orlando, they built some subdivisions out on some old military land at one time, and then they started finding unexploded ordnances underground, or people's backyards. So when you guys were at Camp Nelson, when you guys were ever driving down these posts and stuff to build the barns, was there any unexploded ordnances or bombs or hand grenades or any little relics like that hanging around?
Not that I've heard of. If there was anything like that, it'd actually be at the Tyrone site. If you ever come to the distillery and look at our wall of history there's some old newspaper clippings of just some crazy, there's no other name for it, just from like redneck crazy stuff going on. People used to show up with shotguns and stuff and hold distilleries up for goods or money. And there's a story in there about the dudes that own that distillery set out some landmines to try to get some guys that kept trying to steal their whiskey. Some people at the distillery think there's truth to it. The story is true, but some people at the distillery think that those brothers just said that to scare everybody off. I don't know. But there was a lot of crazy stuff that happened around, the Prohibition era right before then. It's funny to think of now, but Kentucky at one time was considered the West. So there wasn't exactly the same kind of rules and regulations there as there was anything else. That's how bourbon got started. People were making rye whiskey in Maryland and Pennsylvania, and then the government started to tax the heck out of them. And then they found out if I go down into Kentucky, which was Western Virginia at that time, the government's not really there, so they didn't have to get taxed. So that's what everybody moved here, and there was corn here, and that's kind of how bourbon got its start, was to get away from the law in the beginning.
Bourbon and horses.
Yeah. Bourbon and horses, they've gone hand in hand for a long time.
Rafael, have you heard, there's some landmine stories too down in Nicaragua, over there up in Jalapa on the other side of the mountain range between Honduras and Nicaragua, because when they had the civil war in Nicaragua, the Honduran side
that we know, because Nicaragua went to a difficult time with the revolution, right? And I haven't heard lately anything, but before it was definitely some areas that had a lot of those around, and they're very, very dangerous. That's for sure, especially for the people working on the countryside. We haven't seen that, but obviously Nicaragua suffered a tremendous, devastating civil war that a lot of that happened. But also I wanted to ask Tim, can you tell us again the deal? I mean, this is an amazing deal. I posted there. I know Aaron posted the link. I posted. So tell us again, because it's an amazing, when I saw the price, it was, amazing. Tell us again, what is tonight's package includes and the price, Tim?
Sure. The package is simply amazing. I mean, you get, as we were talking earlier, we're all sipping on the Russell's Reserve Single Barrel from Corona from Warehouse F. Unbelievable. So you get that bottle. You get a box of either the Espada Natural or the Espada Oscuro in the Toro size. And you get that, hey Jeff, can you show that nice lighter and cutter again?
Yeah, which are beautiful.
There's also a hat there too.
Oh, the hat too.
You get the hat too, and then you get this nice lighter and cutter. And it's unbelievable deal.
I got to speak to make the camera go here, but you're going to get that too. So thank you, Altadis, for doing that.
Sure.
That's a nice way for our customers. Like I said, without having in-store events, we're trying to spread the love any way we can, and hopefully we'll have in-store events in the near future. I don't know what's the word on the street between let's say with Altadis and with Wild Turkey. You guys, is there a plan at some point to have the guys back on the road doing consumer tastings and events?
Well, I was talking with Paul the other day. We usually have our conference calls. We're traveling, to customers like yourself a little bit more. As far as, doing events, I think that's on an individual basis to the territory manager or the local DM, and we're, you know, facilitating that. But again, you know, you have, you know, some states like, you know, Pennsylvania, you know, we postponed some events that I've done with some other customers. We've done some virtual, we did some in-store where you can grab a bottle and go, you know. But I think it's on a case-by-case basis. That's where I think it's coming from, you know.
I also want to say, Tim, that next time, man, I'm going to send you a light, right? So I'm going to send you a light. When it gets dark, it gets dark. And you know, so it's, I just wanted to remind the viewers that it's not a voice there, that it's not, it's actually Tim, but it's got very dark, like in Orlando and here, obviously we are smoking outside. If I smoke inside, my wife will, I like to say that I do everything in my house that I want. Once she allows to do it, but smoking is definitely a difficult thing inside the house. But I'm gonna send you a light, man. You know, along with some of those cigars that I send you from time to time, I have to send you a light.
Well, if you follow me, there's a hashtag called #Rafaeling, and so I tried to get a pool backdrop to do my Rafaeling today, you know, but it got a little dark here in New Jersey. So, but no, the deal is for $159. And if you know the regular retail, it ranges from anywhere from $250 to $275. The interesting part is I walk into my was with a local friend of mine the other day, and he had already got the package, you know, and he said, "Tim, I got my package." I'm like, "Get out of here." And here it is. It went up on Wednesday, Thursday last week, and he had it delivered from Corona on Saturday. It was amazing. So that came, you know, from Florida to here, you know, and I was like, good stuff, real good stuff.
Sometimes
no, and we appreciate this, Aaron and Seth and Jeff and Tim and Russell, because you know, when this pandemic is so difficult, and like Tim mentioned, we travel a lot. We visit we become friends. You know, I've been visiting Jeff for many years, and part of what we love to do is being able to smoke and drink together. Right? We cannot do that. So this opportunity to be here at home, sharing with you guys the opportunity to talk about our cigars. You know, a lot of work goes into this, just like Bruce mentioned in the case of making, right, these drinks and the distilleries and all of that. It's a difficult job. It's very difficult. So we love to talk about what we do and being able to talk. Now I can see you a little bit, man. Great. Great. There's a face there. You're actually wearing clothes. I was afraid that you might be naked or something. Okay.
That's why the viewership was so high.
30 more minutes, he'll be there.
Yeah.
Well,
so Bruce,
this bottle, yes.
Are you guys open? Is the distillery open yet for tours or no?
So I don't think that we're doing full tours still. They have opened the visitor center back up at a limited capacity. It's only Thursday through Sunday right now, I think. Campari is very conservative as far as its response to COVID, and understandably so. Their two main headquarters in the world are in northern Italy and New York City. So they were hit extremely hard by the pandemic in both locations. You know, we had people in our company that have had COVID. I don't really see us getting back out on the road, you know, like normal, because, you know, me and Dad and Jimmy, when he was able to, we love traveling. It's the hardest part about this year on the job, at least, is like what Rafael was saying. You become family and friends with folks on the road. You really look forward to going to certain cities, not because of the city, but because of the people. And there's people I see every year that I haven't got to see this year. It's like missing out on a buddy. So I don't see us really getting back out there, though, until next spring, I think is what Campari's saying right now. Sometime maybe March or April is when we'll maybe try to start doing things here locally. And we've been scared to death just because of Jimmy. You know, he's somebody that he doesn't like being told he's not allowed to do something. And they told him he's not supposed to be at work. Well, that's hurt his feelings. And so he still comes every day. He just doesn't come inside. So what he does is him and my grandma pack up in their minivan, and he circles the parking lot a few times every day at about 5 o'clock just to make sure everybody came to work, make sure everybody's going to get home safe. So we've all been really missing being out on the road. But the distillery, it's, to be honest, it's probably helped distillery production. because the only people that have been at the distillery really are union workers. They're the people that are actually making this stuff. A lot of the office folks that get in the way of the making of the juice, they haven't been around as much. So whiskey making's been good, but we haven't been able to see anybody.
That's how it usually happens, right? So real quick question
stuff.
on that. Did you guys make any hand sanitizer during the pandemic? Because, every now and then when I get hand sanitizer, I love the stuff that smells like raw corn whiskey off the still. So I don't know if
we did do a little bit of industrial alcohol distillation for sanitizing purposes. I don't know whatever came of that, but we did pretty early on distill some stuff. There were people in Kentucky that's all they did for the first few months of the pandemic. So I'm glad that we had that kind of outlet in Kentucky. The state was pretty lenient on who was allowed to do it. If you had a distilling license, it was pretty easy, I think, to be able to make that stuff and get it out there. Because what this has really hurt is the mom and pop distillery. Somebody like us or Jim Beam or, Heaven Hill, the big guys, Buffalo Trace, this kind of thing doesn't hurt our bottom line because people are still drinking. Alcohol's almost recession proof. It doesn't really matter what mood you're in, you're going to be drinking.
You got to love it.
But some of these mom and pop places they really do depend on the visitor. They depend on word of mouth. They depend on you being in a bar drinking their product. It's hurt a lot of those places. So I was glad that they were able to make some of that hand sanitizer or come up with different ways to make a little bit of money during all this because I don't want to lose them.
Correct.
You guys got Matthew McConaughey drinking your stuff.
Yeah, we got Big Matthew on our team now.
Good old.
He's a swell guy.
Listen, I love him except when he's on the Texas sideline. That's when he drives me insane. So.
As somebody who's met him in person, a handful of times now, and actually got to hang out with him like outside of work, drink and hear him talk, he's exactly who you think he would be.
That's awesome.
He's just the most laid back, almost very Willie Nelson-esque, kind of like a redneck hippie. Laid back, cool. He's got 400 country sayings about everything that ever happens. He's never stressed out. He's just who you think he would be.
Nice. Bruce, I didn't know that Campari owned Wild Turkey, so it's fun. I don't picture Campari is Northern Italian. I don't picture Italians down in Kentucky, and I hope when they're there you show them a good time, man, because that's a little bit different than Italy. So.
Well, we found that they don't drink high proof like we do, so that's always fun. When they try to go toe-to-toe with somebody like Dad or Jimmy.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But they've been about as good of a parent company as we've asked for. They put a lot of money behind the brand, and that coming from Italy, we were the first distillery operation they ever owned. The other places that they owned before us outright were the aperitifs, digestifs, the bitter factories.
Yeah.
And while there is, spirits involved, they're not distilling a lot of the base spirit for that stuff. They know all the secret ingredients that make it, and they do that there. So it was really cool for us. They gave us a bunch of money, and then they were completely hands off as far as production's concerned because they don't know about distilled spirits. So it's kind of the perfect partnership, and they've done a real good job of acquiring brands. Talking about rum lovers earlier, they got Appleton shortly after us, and they just have, they've got a good brand in almost every category now. Campari's been great to us.
Did you ever get to go to Italy?
I have not got to go. I was hoping I would get to go this year, but plans change for everybody this year.
Yeah.
So Jeff picked out. Explain the process of picking a barrel. And I asked this because it's one of these things I would either pick the first barrel I drink or it would be a complete disaster. And I would just, you'd be like, Seth, you have to focus now. So explain this process to me, Bruce.
Yeah. So, Wild Turkey, it's a lot different than everywhere else. One thing about Campari is they're very frugal. And so they haven't hired like a outside person to become the barrel program person like most other distilleries have. When you come to the distillery to pick out, and I always suggest if you get a chance, come to the distillery because we take you to Warehouse A, the oldest warehouse on site, built in the 1890s. It's me or Dad that's going to lead the pick. And then instead of just like a lot of other distilleries, you're going to get 3 to 5 samples in little sample glasses. You're going to have to sit down. If you don't like the samples, tough luck. You pick one of those 3 to 5. Right. Dad's going to have a whole bottom floor of a warehouse available to you. Now, you're not going to go through all those samples, but that kind of selection and that kind of, intimate setting where it's just you and the master distiller picking barrels, I think it allows somebody like me or Dad to go through it and figure out what the consumer wants, who they are, who's going to be drinking, and then kind of guide you through that warehouse. This is maybe these are the proof you want, or this is the warehouse you want it to come from, or, if you want something sweet or spicy or more rye forward. And then you drink through, however many barrels Dad gives for that individual day. And you pick from there. It's just really cool because it's a real one-on-one kind of look behind the curtain of, especially when it's Dad, you get to see how he tastes, what his notes are, what he thinks about stuff that people are picking. And it's definitely different between the two of us, which one you get. We always mark in our sheet, we'll have a sheet of the 40 barrels or whatever, and we'll mark on there, we'll star the ones we like, but we also always write, this is an Eddie barrel, or he'll write, this is one you'll like. We know what each other's going to want, but neither of us agree. We don't like the same kind of whiskey. We definitely have different palates. Mine's a lot closer to Jimmy's than it is my dad's.
Bruce, what's interesting though, Bruce, what's interesting is I was there with some friends and customers of mine, and we were visiting, and your dad, I say, Mr. Russell, can I talk to you for a second? And he took the time, he was on a tour for a private selection, took the tour, came over to us, shook everybody's hand, said hello. It was really cool. And that's what we were there, like I said, just as visitors, but they really took the time out for a few minutes and showed us a lot of love, and I really appreciate that.
Nice.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you always get from Dad, or I call him Mimmy. That's what I call Jimmy. He's not granddad to the grandkids, so that's something you always get from Dad and Mimmy. They're always gonna shake the hand or make sure that they talk to somebody. It's we just feel very lucky to do what we do. Dad always says, if it wasn't for our consumers, then we'd be broke making whiskey somewhere. We'd be making Shine or something. But the fact that we get to make Wild Turkey something that's that good, we feel very blessed to be able to do it. So yeah, that's good to hear.
Is there anything close to that 98, man? That 98 was that 1998 Russell Reserve.
I don't know if we'll ever be able to recreate that. I think it's the best thing that Dad ever made. 98's my favorite thing. It's my favorite modern Wild Turkey product that's come out. It's so good. It's the hardest product to get that we've ever made because it was so limited. But if you ever get a chance to try Russell's 1998, that's what he's talking about. It was a limited time small batch offering, about 15, 16 years old. The juice came from 1998. And that product is just killer. It's my dad's palate kind of distilled into one product. It's sweet. It's just like, eating a candy bar. It's just so good. It's almost like, a Twix or a Snickers. It's nutty. It's got a nice caramel note to it. It's way easier to drink than it deserves to be. It's such a good product. I agree with you. 98's a killer.
So Seth, you were asking about the tasting process, but I think it's kind of similar to like blending cigars too, is that if you go to a cigar factory, let's say you're at the Altadis factory in La Romana, and you ask them for certain tobaccos that are going to be, let's say I want something real creamy, or you want something real spicy or just earthy.
They always take care of me when I'm at the factory at Altadis.
I'm sure they do.
Whenever I'm there, it's just, I got mazzos. It's wonderful.
But they know exactly what tobaccos, where to go.
Yeah.
What's going to give you that flavor profile. So at the distillery, it's the same way. So,
Oh.
Uh-oh.
I think Jeff frozen there.
So
he's frozen.
There you go. He's back.
You got to go back to the beginning, Jeff.
Oh, yeah. So what I was saying is that we kind of let them know the profile before we go up there. so that they're not going to pull 5 barrels that are like what I call real hot, super spicy, or ones that are, you know, just overly woody, or, you know, there's different flavor profiles you look for. And these guys can pick it out. They know which ones are going to be in that flavor profile. Some guys, when they do a single barrel, they want it to almost be like a rye profile or something. So they know what whiskey is going to fit that category, that realm that you're looking for. And so that's the biggest advantage of when you go to the distillery and are working with the distillers, because they know exactly what's in the warehouses. I mean, I don't know how many warehouses you have, Bruce, but you got, I mean, there's tons of them, and they know exactly what warehouse produces what kind of profile.
How many warehouses do you have, Bruce?
We have right around 30. About 750,000 barrels is what we've got aged right now.
Wow.
In the Wild Turkey portfolio. And that's pretty big. I mean, we're probably, as far as the big guys in Kentucky, we're in the middle of the pack. We're not nearly as big as Heaven Hill or Jim Beam. Those kind of distilleries have millions of barrels. You know, there's only 4.5 million people that live here, but we've got almost 10 million bourbon barrels.
Wow.
We've got our priorities straight, that's for sure.
Yeah. Jeff, when did you pick out this barrel again?
This one we picked last year, but there's another one because of COVID. I don't know whether Bruce or whether your dad did this other pick for us. They know what kind of profile we're looking for. I don't know whether you did this or Eddie did it, the one that's coming in next.
Yeah, we actually been tasting everything this year together. That's one good thing about the COVID situation as far as work is concerned. Most of the time, me and Dad are never around each other at work because one of us will be here and then one of us will be on the road. You know, and then we switch that up. It's always good to have at least one person here to be able to do stuff like pick out barrels or be there in case somebody needs something tasted in the lab. But this year we've both been home the whole time, so we've tasted everything together for the most part. You are getting a Warehouse S barrel, I think 5th floor. Warehouse S has been my favorite this year. It's got, I was saying before we hopped on here live, it's got this really nice, very unique wood note to it because that Warehouse in particular gets very warm. Its average temperature is quite a bit hotter than most of the other ones on site. And there were some barrels that were put in there about 6-7 years old, aged just a year or two in there before you all picked it. And that heat at the very end of its life gave it this very unique kind of fresh wood note. I know probably none of you all have been to a cooperage, but that's a place where barrels are made.
I work at a cooperage.
Well, there you go. Well, the outside of a lot of, depending on what you're going to use the barrel for, a lot of times your wood's going to have to be air dried for quite a while. You can also kiln dry, kind of like dry in an oven, but there's a very particular smell that wood gets when it's air drying out there. And this product almost tastes like that smells to me in such a unique, very interesting way. I love Warehouse S. I love it. So I'm really excited to see what your all's barrel is going to taste like. Hopefully it'll be around next year. Still a bottle or two will be floating around. So if we're down in Florida, down your neck of the woods, I can grab some and see how it tastes.
We'll squirrel some away.
Some cedar qualities to go with the Montecristo white right there. That's really
there you go. And you know, the more
thinking right
listen,
there, man.
The more I listen, Bruce, to the process, right? And as Jeff mentioned, it's very similar to the way we do it on the cigars, right? So for me, which I am very hands-on in terms of the blending, the most important part for me is to know all of the tobaccos that we have, right? That's why we visit the farms when they're growing the tobacco year after year to know how that crop that year is coming. But then the process of the fermentation, how it continues to develop, because sometimes they don't develop the same way because of the weather patterns or things like that. And it's an important part to continue trying. So we do a blend, we try, like Jeff mentioned, sometimes we know what we want, sometimes we just go from zero. But when we are doing blends, like for the Montecristo, Romeo and Juliet, H. Orman, which are, our iconic brands, then the process is a little bit different because we have, depending on the brand, we have certain profiles that we are looking for, just like Jeff mentioned, what the things that they're looking, right, for. Sometimes we want them a little bit more spicy, but the sweetness, the strength, and the different notes. So it's very important to know the inventory that we have access to, that we have ready to, and then from them we start making. So in the case of the Montecristo Espada Oscuro that I was involved with, we did about 30 different blends. And then out of those 3, we picked 3 or 4, and then we continue making changes. In our case of this Montecristo Espada Oscuro, ended up that it was very similar to what we had in the Espada regular, and we decided to go with that blend. But the process is a very similar one. We want the, and that's why I think, Bruce, is in this particular one, it pairs so well with the cigar, because you have some sweetness to it, right? You have that honey aspect of it, which enhances the cigar experience. I did smoke first the cigar before I started drinking, and I didn't drink it alone before. So that is such an important part. I love the sweetness on it, right? For me, that enhances the cigar. And the notes, that honey notes, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's I don't know if there's a more perfect pair than a nice cigar and then a nice like aged dark spirit, whether that's whiskey, rum, cognac, scotch. There's just something about dark aged spirits and that cigar. It just seems to perfectly go hand in hand. I've talked to a couple other cigar blenders before, and there's so many similarities in the kind of thought process behind the blends. It is very interesting because, sometimes you might want something a little bit lighter. Sometimes you want something a little bit more bold in your face. You can blend those two things together, though, and maybe find kind of the perfect marriage, and that's what it's all about.
Sure.
Right. No, it's the similarities are amazing, and at the end of the day, you wanted to create that experience for the consumer, right? So it's I always find fascinating when I'm talking to people about spirits, because that is definitely enhances, just like the food, right? Which food you're doing with the cigars or things like that, it just enhances. It can enhance it, or it can ruin the experience. So pairing it with the right one is an important thing.
Yeah, and this is something that you've said a lot tonight, and it's just like such a truth, I think, to our brand too, is that it's all about the experience that the consumer's having, and it's about enhancing his experience. And you're exactly right.
Sure.
I want my product to taste good, but the most important thing is, does the consumer enjoy himself? Is it tasty? Is it enhancing his experience? Does he have a smile on his face when he's drinking it? Does she have a smile on her face when she's drinking it? That's what's important. It's having a good time. Like you said, we're missing smoking and drinking with our buddies. It's around, sitting around a table with your friends and, just, shooting the shit with them and drinking a nice stiff pour and having a nice cigar.
That's right.
Well, I'm smiling right now. But a quick question, Rafael. So listen, I've got both of these cigars that are burned. I've pretty much smoked most of them. So is there a difference in the filler on these, or is the wrapper different? Because they taste like different fillers as well.
And that's incredible. So, there have been a lot of talk about how much of the wrapper adds to the cigar. In this particular case, it's the same blend, same fillers, same binder, just a different wrapper. And the experience is completely different, right? It's just one little change, and it's an important change. I mean, there's you talk to Pepin and what percentage of the wrapper makes into the flavor profile. I think it's hugely important, and we see it here, right? It's the same blend with a different wrapper. Amazing.
Yeah, incredibly different flavor profile between the two. So yes. The Oscuro is a little more fuller body. It's got a longer finish on it. You taste it on your tongue longer. I would consider the natural to be a medium bodied, super balanced. So it's incredible the difference between the two just with the wrappers.
Just the wrapper. But remember, I said it is a ligero wrapper, right? So it's very strong, has a lot of body. But again, has a lot of flavor, but we fermented it very well. As a matter of fact, it burns very well. which is
Correct.
something that we were extremely worried on that cigar. The fermentation has to be perfect, but the complexity and the body that adds to the cigar is amazing.
Well, I think what you find interesting, I had your Master's Keep limited edition. That was phenomenal. I smoked that with a regular Espada and few months back, and that paired excellently.
So Bruce, one of the cool things that you don't have to worry about, the cigar makers have to worry about, is that when they change, like he's talking about on this wrapper, and he's saying this is a Ligero, not only you have to worry about it tasting good, but it has to burn good. And one of the things that when they go into these thicker tobaccos is that the combustion is sometimes a lot more difficult. So that's fantastic the way it's burning. And obviously this is well fermented.
Bruce,
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to send you some cigars, man. We're gonna send you some stuff.
Yeah.
No, I remember when we were working on that wrapper and it was being fermented in Plasencia to get it to where we wanted. Let me tell you, we did those cigars at the same time with the similar wrapper and the same fermentation process, a different variety of Habano, which we do in the aging room, being number 2. And what we did, I remember being so worried about it that I took a plane. It was 2 years ago on Christmas, for the Christmas, during the Christmas holidays, I took a plane to go to Nicaragua to double check how the fermentation was, because we were about to go into production in January, right after the factory opened. And I was so worried about it. I took a one-day trip to Esteli just to check on the wrapper. And let me tell you, Plasencia say, we told you it was well fermented. Yeah, but I was worried. What can I say? I needed to check. Because you're right, Jeff, listen, a cigar that has a great flavor, if it doesn't burn very good, it takes away from the flavor profile and from the overall experience of the smoker. So that's an added, right? An added difficulty that we have, and that one that we embrace. I must tell you that 20 years ago when I started smoking cigars, most of the cigars never used ligeros, right? La Flor started, and more ligeros and things like that. It was a move to get more complexity and stronger flavor profiles. But it's definitely in our continuous pursuit of different flavor profile. We have to try different things. So that's something that traditionally never was done before.
Well, what's interesting is I want to try that bottle S we're working on, and we've mentioned it before, we're working on a FSG Montecristo with Rafael and Jeff.
Ah, okay.
Ooh, yes.
So,
That's supposed to be a secret, man. That's supposed to be a secret.
oh, sorry.
No secrets in this show.
So
It's,
that's a good
yeah.
idea. So maybe those cigars will be ready when the barrel comes in
Oh, there you
that
go.
Bruce and Eddie picked out, and you
Okay.
compare it with that and see the difference between the two different Russell's Reserves come from the different warehouses and taste the difference as well. So that would be that'd be pretty interesting. So I'm gonna have to set a few more bottles aside to make sure we don't sell them all, so we could do that.
And just think about me when you're doing that, okay?
I'll remember. I hope.
Bruce is now, I know it's 51, at least 51% corn. Are you more corn heavy, or is it, or what? How are you? I mean, what do you think individually?
We're pretty traditional.
Okay.
We're a 75-13-12 recipe.
Okay.
Which is just typical. The thing that we're probably the most like out there with is our malt percentage. That just has that has a lot to do with kind of our old school thought about like how to make whiskey. You don't have to even use malt anymore, which is why you'll see a lot of like new guys do 100% rye or 100% corn, or they'll do 95% 1 grain and 5% malt. Is because you can just buy the actual enzyme that you need from malted stuff to make the alcohol. You can just buy that at chemistrywalmart.com, you know, like you can buy it on Google. And so a lot of distilleries do that now. My granddad is very old school. And so even though that is a natural enzyme that you get, he says nothing's natural that comes in a bucket that looks like that. So we still use like high enough malt percentage, we don't have to add, additional enzymes and whatnot. So the 12% malt on both our bourbon and rye recipes is probably the most unusual thing. But as far as rye percentage in the bourbon, we're pretty standard for the industry. Corn percentage, we're pretty standard, yeah. We have a very
I would like to say
mash
also, I would like to say hello to a couple of people that are watching. Our colleague Alan Rubin down in North Carolina, which is asking whether you can do a whiskey with candy corn, and I think Aaron just answered, try it. And also Rondetta Watson, from Kentucky, our attorney for Tabacalera USA, that has been sending me some fantastic whiskey from Kentucky. So they're watching. Rondetta, thank you for joining. So the great friends from Kentucky that are watching, and they're so proud of the Kentucky, but they send me a lot of stuff. Great, thank you.
With candy corn. Of course he asked that question.
Listen, I think we should do a Halloween release, right? A
There you
little
go.
Russell candy corn single barrel Corona pick, right?
That's a big debate in my household. My girlfriend loves candy corn. I hate it.
Yeah.
Do you like the pumpkins, though? Do you like the pumpkins, or are you against that?
I'm just not a big sweets eater. I'm always the kind of person that will get an extra side of French fries over a dessert.
There you go.
That's smart. That's a smart play.
Yeah.
Well, a smart guy. Bruce, look at you and look at my side. So I love the sweet.
Yeah,
Rafael,
well,
you have a whole bottle of this, right?
I do.
All right. I just want to make sure you save some, because when your heat lose by at least 20 tomorrow night, I just want to make sure you have some to make everything okay.
That is very low.
so Bruce, has there been any challenges working for your father or with your father?
I mean,
What's
a little
that like?
bit.
Be
I think
careful.
there's
Be
always
careful.
challenges when you're working with family, because you can't leave work at work, even if you try to. I'll be home eating supper, and I'll get a call from him, and he'll be mad that I've done something, or whatever. But it's been really good for me. My dad and grandfather are both. They're pretty, stoic, quiet patriarchs of their household. Not a whole lot of like hand holding and sensitive stuff. And so actually getting to work with them has opened up a whole nother side to both my dad and granddad to me.
Nice.
It's allowed us to become much closer. It's allowed me to get to know who they really are, I think, as people. So for that aspect alone, I've really enjoyed getting to work with family, and I think it's made us a lot closer. They're pretty easygoing though at work. Dad and Mimi have both been very, open with me experimenting with things or asking questions about things I know they've got 1,000 times. They've, spent hours, days, weeks, months walking me around the distillery and answering everything from why is this color to what's the pH balance of this, So for me, it's been really good, but Dad will let everybody know pretty quickly I'm the spoiled one, because Dad had to work from the bottom of the union up, and it took him, 30-something years to have any kind of hand in making products. And, I was 3 months in, and my granddad had given me these handwritten notes that nobody knew existed. He was letting me make the whiskey, all that kind of stuff. So it's been a little bit easier for me for sure than that.
Yeah, well,
Bruce,
grandfathers, they're supposed to spoil their grandkids. So I guess when you're working with your grandfather as well, he probably goes, looks at it a little differently.
He's got your back.
Oh yeah,
probably.
he didn't have to deal with me growing up, but he had to deal with Dad. Dad grew up in the 60s and 70s, so he was a long-haired hippie, is what Granddad likes to say. And so he didn't know all my stuff running around like my parents do, so he probably thinks I was a better kid, too.
That's the card you have to play. I mean, have you ever done any projects with your father-in-law yet?
No, I have not.
Yeah, that's where you got to be careful. Because listen,
Yeah.
I was doing a roofing truss with my father-in-law, and he didn't put some bolts in. I think he was trying to kill me. So that's where you have to pay attention when the roof collapses on you.
Yeah, I don't want to have to do that because my partner's dad is he's a real man's man. He fights fires for a living. He builds stuff. And
Yeah,
I'm not that way. I can fix your computer, but that's about it.
Yeah, that's where you got to be careful.
So I'm just dreading the first time he expects me to help him fix up his truck or I'm worthless.
No, yeah, listen, my father-in-law sends me up into the fields to mow up at Atlanta, Virginia, and then there's gunshots and bear hunting going on. I think he's just trying to kill me up there. So it's
Yeah.
just.
Now, I would be into that because that's more my speed. But
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Listen, all I do is smoke and drink while I'm up on the land. So that's what you have to do.
Well,
That's
we
what
got
the
a
country's
comment.
for. Yeah.
We got a comment from someone. I think it's John, and we said show the bottle again. So this is a bottle you can get from. It's a single bottle from Corona, and it has all the information on the warehouses and all of that. I'm sorry, cannot see with the light here, but fantastic information in the back, very detailed. And yeah, so this is the bottle, John.
So Jeff, when you decide on this barrel, how long until they bought? Obviously, Bruce, you bottle it for them.
We do, yeah.
When
It usually takes about 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, things got slow during COVID though.
They did. They definitely did. And
'Cause
it got
it's one of
slow. Single barrels have been a big problem this year because it's slowed down for everybody. I don't know if you all are aware, but Southern furloughed a lot of their on-premise people. And I think a lot of those people are back now. But it's changed the way that Campari works, the way that our distributors work, the way that the distillery works. So yeah, it's been a pain this year, but I guess this year's taught everybody how to kind of do, work on, be quick on your toes because we've all had to adjust.
Bruce, what's very interesting though about your product, and besides the one working with Jeff now, is your 10-year rye. Man, I have a lot of my buddies that they're not rye guys, but I've turned them on to the Russell Rye. Now they're rye guys, Russell Rye guys. I mean, that pairs very well with a lot of a little bit more fuller cigars, So I think it's a great aspect of that product too.
Yeah, I think especially with something like a cigar, if you're looking for something that is maybe a little just less sweet, a Kentucky style rye whiskey, and that's what we do. We do a Kentucky style. So you're looking at things like us or some of the Buffalo Trace products. Heaven Hill makes some ryes like this. They've got a little bit more corn in them than your traditional rye. So it's a nice balance of baking spice, earthiness, but there's still some of that vanilla and stuff in there as well. There's some excellent ryes that are kind of this other style where they're 95% rye. That's more stuff like Dickel, Bullet. It has a good rye whiskey like that. They all come from MGP, and those are very sharp, dry, grassy. They're a little bit different.
Yes, sir.
Spicy.
Yeah, a lot
Very
spicy. But I'm a rye fan more than I'm a bourbon fan. So any kind of rye whiskey, I'm a big fan of.
Well, I must say that I'm very impressed. Even I visited Florida International University School of Hospitality 2 weeks ago, and they have an area where they are teaching the students about wine, about spirits, testing and to recognize it and to learn about it. And this is happening now. I was very surprised that it's happening at the university level. It's an amazing thing. We're working with them in teaching students about flavors of the cigars and what have you. So I am really surprised, right? That it's the hospitality at the university level is trying to teach the students about all of this, which is, I think it will enhance definitely the professionals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
I think, Rafael, what's happening is that the culinary world is, it used to be leaning more towards pairing with wines. And there's just so much bourbon and whiskey enthusiasts, as well as cigars. So the whole, I call it the trifecta, when you have a great cigar paired with a great whiskey and a great meal. So I'm not really surprised that the hospitality industry, the schools are catching on to that, because that's what the consumers want. It's all about better and drinking better, smoking better, but drinking less. And people tend to smoke cigars and drink fine whiskey, not to get slam drunk. They're drinking this because of the flavors and for the experience and in their time with the people that they're doing it with. So it's good to see that the university is catching on to that.
Absolutely. And talking to the dean of the school, one of the things he said, listen, we normally want to prepare the professionals on hospitality. So you're right, when they go and eat, you pay attention to the wine, right, and the food, but the experience doesn't end there. So what is next? The cigars and the spirit to round the experience, right? And that, is great to see this enthusiasm for that. So I am delighted, right, that it's taking it to that level and preparing the next generation of professionals.
I always get irritated with the pairing with the food part. Just get the food out of there. Just leave the spirits and the tobacco and the wine. I don't need the food. Whatever. Looks beautiful. That's fantastic.
Listen, Seth, I want to sit next to you because I'm going to take your steak.
Listen, you take my steak and I'll be okay. It's fine. I'll just keep drinking.
Actually, I'd like to sit right between you and Rafael, because if you look at his pictures on Instagram, this guy knows how to eat some fine dining.
Yes.
Yes, he does.
Well,
Yes,
he'll take us out to eat. All I need is some water and spirits, and you can have food and spirits.
I love to cook. I love to eat. I start with the I love to eating part, right?
Yeah.
So during the pandemic, I just had to listen. I don't have the luxury to go to the restaurants and things like that, and so I just decided, listen, I love the experience, and we found ourselves, my wife and I, getting dressed for dinner, preparing the dinner, sitting down and have a proper dinner like if we were in a restaurant. And I think I gained few pounds during the pandemic.
Okay.
Hey, everybody does. Bruce, I'm gonna be honest with you. It's been a while since I've had wild turkey, and the reason for that is I had a really rough experience, mostly because of me, many years ago with Wild Turkey 101. And I tried a pairing at the time, which was not the best of pairings, and I regret that decision. But I'm going to come back to Wild Turkey 101 for you, and just have it just be Wild Turkey 101.
There you go. Yeah. 101 is actually it's as good of a baseline product as you're going to find, just because, the average age on it's around 8 years old and in the high proof and whatnot. But that's a common story I hear. It's, man, I haven't drank Wild Turkey since, and there's something about that higher proof, that just 101, that one extra proof. It draws people in at an early age, and then they try to, prove themselves or something and drink half a bottle or a whole bottle, And
Early age is a good way of putting it, and the 101 is definitely another positive way of spending that. So
I think a lot of country songs have been written about experiences with Wild Turkey 101.
Yeah.
It cuts a lot of people's teeth, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And if you drink enough of it, you'll gobble like a turkey.
So Seth, earlier before we went on air, you were talking about some of the warehouse accidents and things of that nature. Do you want to?
Yes.
You want to revisit that discussion?
Bruce, you mentioned a warehouse accident.
Yeah. So somebody had asked earlier about all the letters of the alphabet and whatnot, because they heard F, and we have multiple Fs, we have multiple A's. Because we have some offsite locations. We almost have the whole alphabet, but we're missing a few in the middle. I think one because it just was falling down and we stopped using it. But the one that I remember, we lost a warehouse May of 2000 due to a fire. That's kind of the natural enemy to the distiller, I guess. Because, like Jimmy said, the job's pretty easy. You take 3 days to, make a day, or you take a day or two to make whiskey. Maybe 3 days total, you put it in a warehouse, and then you wait for Mother Nature to do work for 8 years, and we're good to go. But we're always worried about fire, any kind of a natural thing. Kentucky has crazy weather, so tornadoes have torn up warehouses too. But May of 2000, we lost an entire warehouse. We did have insurance on the warehouse, so I'm sure we actually made out probably better than we lost. Because the insurance company that we used at that time, I don't even think is around anymore.
Put them out of business.
Probably took them out of business, cashing in on that after that deductible.
Well, those companies actually had it pretty rough. There wasn't really a fire in Kentucky for decades and decades, and then there were 3 back to back to back. Heaven Hill lost their whole distillery operation in like 6 whole warehouses in '96.
Oh my God.
Jim Beam had a big fire in '98 and then ours in 2000. So there weren't any fires forever. And then you had 3 right there at the end of '90s, on into 2000. I actually benefited from the fire. I was young enough. I was in middle school at that time. And because our fire, we don't have fire department in Lawrenceburg like most people do. Ours is volunteer fire only, because we just don't have enough people there to afford to pay our fire.
Yeah.
And so when our fire happened, they did what a lot of people probably thought to do, which was, let's pour some water on it. Now, they didn't pour it directly on the fire, thank God, because that would have done a lot of bad. You don't put out an alcohol fire with water. So if you ever have an alcohol spill or something in your kitchen, suffocate it with something. Maybe hit it with a fire extinguisher, not water. Well, they poured some water on it, and it picked the fire up and moved it down our cliffside into our river. Our river was on fire for a long time. There was a fire on site for like 10 days because it got underneath our cliffside. We have limestone in Kentucky, which makes our water a little bit cleaner than a lot of other places. Makes for good distilling, but it means there's a lot of cave systems and a lot of hollow ground as well. And so that fire got underground, caused big problems. But it got into our water system, and so we didn't have water in the local community for a long time. And so we got out of school when I was in middle school. I loved it. I didn't have to go to school for like a week or two because of the water situation. Dad and Jimmy did not think it was funny, and they did not think it was cool. I learned that pretty quick. But, we lost the whole warehouse, about 15,000 barrels at that time, which is in the 20s of millions of dollars of inventory. Once that whiskey's matured. There's always something going on. We talked about the Barton's thing that happened here recently, where that's called keeling, when the whole place just splits in half. There's always those kind of dangers in warehousing. Warehousing is such an unusual thing. There's been a lot of people make money in Kentucky in the bourbon boom, and a lot of them are families, because there's like one family cooperage that makes like 90% of all the barrels. Right. There's one family business that builds and maintains every warehouse in Kentucky. And so, they've got people working on site from their business every day at Wild Turkey to make sure our warehouses are safe to be in. With that kind of weight, some of our engineers are concerned with how many barrels are going in on this side versus the other side. Can we take as many barrels out at one time? That all goes into inventory at our place. Because some of these buildings date back 150 years. And we're putting new inventory in them every day.
Yeah, because you're talking about...
You have your own engineers, or you hire an engineering firm?
Well, we have our own engineers on site. We have a head engineer for all the kind of normal distillery stuff. When I say normal, I mean stuff like architecture, inventory, stuff like that. And then we also have a whole team of chemical engineers that work more on, product development, tasting, blending, that kind of stuff.
Well, if you need a structural engineer, I mean, he's a PE. You can hire my father-in-law. You don't even need to pay him. He's got enough money, but you can ship me some bourbon, and he'll be happy. I mean, it's gonna be perfect for us.
There you go. Yeah,
we're gonna make this happen.
Being a distiller, you got a little bit of everything. There's a little bit of engineering. There's a little bit of like food and bev, almost chef aspect to it. A little bit of it is marketing and being what I like to refer to Jimmy as kind of like a good old snake oil salesman. He shows up with his little truck in town and he's got his wares he's going to sell you. There's a little bit of everything you've got to be a distiller these days. It's changed a lot. It's not just a guy in the lab doing blends anymore. But big business changes things, and it's good for all of us right now in the whiskey industry.
Well, you got to touch Matthew McConaughey too, so there you go.
Yeah, we're friends.
Sprinkle of that. Now. All right.
You had mentioned that some of the oldest warehouses, I think you were saying 1860 or whatever, so they're still around. But what is the maintenance like for a warehouse of that age? Like, some of the boards on the outside have to be replaced and things what's the maintenance kind of plan to be able to kind of like maintain the the character of that warehouse, but still make it structurally sound so that you can continue to use it.
Maintenance for those warehouses is actually easier a lot of times than the new ones. We do have to replace the floor in every warehouse every so often because the barrels are so heavy and they scratch everything up. But the oldest warehouses were made with solid oak, where today it's it's just more typical woods.
Right.
I think it's treated pine is what most of the warehouses are made with now on the inside. So that old oak, I mean, it lasts forever, and it is sturdy, heavy. There's less maintenance on those than there is most of the new ones. Those warehouses, though, there's not much you really can do besides, you do some support every now and then. You're going to do some general maintenance. If you see any kind of load-bearing wood that is getting a little old, you might replace it or support it. The oldest warehouses, though, usually have the least amount of troubles. There's a time, though, in warehousing, because warehousing itself goes through trends. They'll want to use certain woods, or there'll be different designs. There's a time period where there's a handful of warehouses on our site where the warehouses just aren't built as well.
Yeah.
Whatever architecture, structural stuff they were doing at the time just doesn't hold up. And those warehouses, sadly, it's one of those things, just like what happened in Barton's. I guarantee you they knew something was going on with that warehouse before that split and fell down. Now, they definitely didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah.
But there are warehouses that we know right now, we're on borrowed time. We maybe got 4 or 5 years until we're going to have to tear this down and build a new one.
Right.
So not as much maintenance really we can do as you maybe even would think. It's just we're crossing our fingers, hope they'll last as long as they can. But the oldest ones, they seem to really last just because of the wood that was used, the way it was built. We just don't do that kind of stuff anymore. They're solid oak on the inside. They're really made to last.
Yeah.
Bruce, if you ever need to get a support beam, now I don't know if this is going to pass code inspection, but I'll let you know. Locust trees are incredibly strong, and they're great for support beams. So if you have a locust tree and you need to cut some wood, I'm just telling you, I've used locust trees many times to help some support some pavilions until we get in there and actually do something. So
all right, I'll tell my warehouse guys next time I see them.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go to the bank on it, but I'm just telling you that it works.
What's the newest warehouse that you have? How old is that, and what's kind of like the current architectural trend for building those warehouses?
They're building them bigger now because of that. There's one family that owns the company that builds them all, and so they've been building warehouses twice the size of a normal one. Basically, they've been cutting everybody deals. We'll build you a bigger warehouse, and we'll charge you less for warehouse space if you let us build like one that's the size of 2 of them instead of having us build 2 warehouses, because it saves them time and effort. The newest one was built last year. I mean, we've been building a new one every year for about the past decade.
Nice.
And the newer ones, now this one was a Rick warehouse, I think, but we have built in the past decade something that we haven't had in the past, which is palletized warehousing, which instead of setting them in rows of ricks, like a shelf space, they're just stacked on top of each other on pallets. That's done a lot more in Scotch warehousing than it is in American whiskey. But we found for products that we do that don't need as much age, that really just need maturation and heat, those work really well. So like a product like American Honey that's got 4-year-old straight bourbon whiskey, but really what you need is you need proof for that. You need some heat, you need some sweetness, but it's going to be blended in with honey and whatnot. Those palletized warehouses work wonders. You can stack a lot more barrels in there. It's actually a lot safer for our employee because you're working with trucks. You're not hand rolling barrels. So palletized has become a lot more popular in Kentucky in the past decade or so, compared to kind of the shelf aging that Rick warehouses give you.
Right. Yeah, the cooperage I work at, it's obviously palletized, so you don't have to worry about too much about anything in the barrel yet. At that point, you're just kind of storing the barrel before you ship them out to the customer. So, yeah, I could see how that would be definitely more efficient in regards to space and movement and things like that.
Aaron, you work with corks too, don't you?
Yeah, we do the corks as well, and the bar tops for these types of bottles and things like that. Yeah.
All that talk about Rafael and his fine dining, I had to get myself a little pork rinds to pair
Oh,
with
there
this
you go.
Oh yeah,
great cigar.
Chicharrones.
Yeah, and this great whiskey.
Rafael, I saw that you had to sign off. I just want to tell you really quick. While I truly enjoyed the Espada Oscura, this third band that you have to peel off with this old stamp thing, it's so rewarding. It's one of those things that when you're like, gosh, I did something right today. So
Yeah.
it's the little things for me that make that
The
mean
little
so
details,
much.
and that was done then now to the Espada Oscuro. It's easier to peel, right? So we all had that situation when you have big rings, anillos, and you have to take it out, and it's very, very difficult. But guys, Jeff, I put there in the chat, I need to sign off. My son got something on his eye. I need to take it to the emergency room. And so, listen, guys, it's been a fantastic experience. Thank you very much for including me, Tim, Jeff, Aaron, Seth, and Bruce. I appreciate it. I apologize about this.
No problem.
I love the conversation. I love the drink. Actually, I need to drink a lot of water to drive now.
Yeah.
Family is important.
Yeah, family first.
All right, take off. Thank you, Rafael.
Okay? Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rafael.
Bye-bye.
He's more responsible than me. I would just sterilize it with a bourbon on my kid. That's what I would. Oh, you're fine. Pour some bourbon on it.
Well, the interesting part of what Rafael didn't get a chance to, this is kind of going back to the original Espada. I happen to be blessed to, when the company was just starting that, and when we were working on the blend with Honduras and the Dominican factory. And it was interesting how they put them together. It was kind of like a quasi competition to see, which they worked with Placentia's tobacco to develop that great blend. So it was really a process that they had to go through. And again, it was, great cigar you guys are enjoying tonight.
Yep.
And now the Oscuro is out now. So it's really great.
That's very nice.
Beautiful. Just real quick, Bruce, on that, you were mentioning fires too. Do you guys ever have a problem with the lightning hitting the warehouses because of the heat that it gets held inside?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if y'all spent much time in Kentucky, but the weather here, we don't get storms like hurricanes and stuff like you do in Florida, but we have bad thunderstorms here quite often. We have bad weather. We're in the weird part of the country where it's 80 one day and 40 the next. And we actually had a bad lightning storm happen. I mean, it's less than a month ago. Me and Dad were at the distillery, and we saw lightning strike one of the warehouses. So it happens pretty often. But we have lightning rods and stuff to kind of keep them away. When we had our fire, it was an electrical mishap. It wasn't lightning. Now, I do think Heaven Hills maybe was lightning, though.
Wow.
So when we have problems with warehouse, like inventory, it usually it's weather related. It's lightning fire or big tornadoes have come through and wiped out warehouses. Buffalo Trace had a very famous tornado rescue survivor bourbon series that they put out. And it, split one of the warehouses almost in half, and some of that bourbon made it.
Oh, wow.
After it was hit by a tornado. So, yeah, we're always concerned with weather here, but it's the crazy weather. It's the super hot, humid summers we have. And then we're one of those weird states that we have almost a southern summer, but a northern winter. And it's that temperature difference here that makes the bourbon so good. And why you make the best whiskey really in Tennessee, Kentucky, the Virginias, that kind of area of the country, because that temperature variation makes the whiskey moving in and out of that barrel and picks up all your flavor and color. But yeah, we have bad lightning storms, tornadoes, all that kind of stuff happening here, and it definitely affects the whiskey.
That's a big problem in the cigar. Back when Florida had all these tobacco warehouses up in North Florida, lightning was the #1 cause of the fires when the tobacco's in the curing barn. And it was the same thing. The heat would hold in it. And so when a thunderstorm rolls through, air temperature drops, lightning pops off the tobacco barn. And then fire is a problem in Central America too. I've seen several box factories that are burned down, and they tend to be because the electrical stuff is there's no inspection, and some of the electrical work down there was man, back in the day was incredible. But anyway, incredibly as in dangerous. And they tend to, set off a box factory fire was not that uncommon either.
I think the last electrical fire the cigar industry had was AJ Fernandez IPCPR 2018. So, sorry, Bruce, that's an inside joke on that one. So,
yeah, but
I mean, that's got to. I mean, now, Bruce, have you ever? You see these storms that come in. Have you ever recovered a barrel or multiple barrels? And has that become kind of the special whiskey for you guys?
I'm not like poking fun at anybody that's released stuff like this, but we've had bourbon that's survived like tornadoes and stuff. It doesn't change the way it tastes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but listen, I'm a sucker. I'll buy it. Like, oh yeah, you gotta buy it. Yeah. You got us.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff, like, it usually ends up being worse because then it's not in that warehouse aging like it's supposed to. We definitely do as a family have barrels that we set aside as like, these are ones we think are special. Some of those get released as products. Some of them get set aside in the bottom of A and get put into the private barrel program. Some of them sit there for research and development purposes over the years. Most of our very best stuff or our very worst stuff, we always know where it's at just in case.
Nice.
Well, I had your 02. And like I said, we were talking about the 1998 earlier. I also had the 02. The 02 was a lot different from the 98, but also very good.
Yeah, we're actually coming out with an 03.
Oh, okay.
It's supposed to be out sometime this year. I don't know with COVID because some of our releases have been weird this year. Because of we just had distribution problems this year because every state's handled what's available, what's open, what's not open differently.
Yeah.
But there should be a Russell's Vintage that comes out sometime at the end of this year. Now, everybody's got their own opinion. Some people like the 02 better. I like the 03 better than I did the 02, but I don't like it as much as I like the 98.
Gotcha.
I'm with you. I think the 98, that as far as since my dad's taken over, and Dad's really been kind of the one making everything and making decisions at the distiller level for a little over a decade now or more. And I think 98's the best thing that we've put out since Dad's kind of been in charge. That whiskey is very special.
So, Bruce, is the plan for you to kind of follow in your dad's and grandfather's footsteps and kind of take over once and I'm sure your dad's got many more years, still to go, but is the plan for you to kind of follow in his footsteps, kind of take over as he kind of passes the torch?
Well, if you ask Jimmy, we're just waiting for Dad to retire. I hope that happens. My ultimate goal is to make whiskey. I would love to follow in Dad and Granddad's footsteps. We're owned by Campari though, so that that kind of thing is totally up to them. That seems like what is going to happen. I mean, just based on language that they use, and I think kind of what their plans are long term. It's one of those things that they don't really need, just the way distilleries work today. They don't need us to make whiskey, but I think having one of us there is important because it kind of keeps the DNA the same. And when I mean that, I mean that, I think at every distillery, and I'm sure at every cigar company, you need somebody there that's going to be able to look at the company and not be afraid to tell them, I don't think this is a good idea.
Yeah.
That's able to think not in terms of how much money are we making, but let's make a little bit of money, but let's make sure we put out a good quality product that we're all proud of standing behind.
Is this Russell's Reserve? Is this Wild Turkey?
Yeah, and I think that it's got our name on it in Russell's, and even Wild Turkey, we feel a sense of ownership as far as we're carrying on a legacy that's been going since the 1860s.
Yeah.
And I think if one of us is still there, we're going to make sure that we don't kind of screw up what Jimmy has set for us in the past 60-something years. Not that I think Campari would screw it up. It's just I think it's always important to have somebody there that's from that place, that grew up around it, that really knows. And it doesn't have to be me. It could be one of the union guys, to be honest. But I want to make sure my like goal is to make sure nobody screws up what Jimmy's done, you know?
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't even trust me and Dad to do that, but I think we got a better shot than most people.
Yeah, but that just goes to show, you know, recognizing that, and that's the commitment, and that's a part of the legacy. That's what's
Yeah, I mean, the continuity is important. I think since you are very interested in continuing on that kind of family legacy, and it's not something that you're being like forced into, that you actually have, you know, the interest in doing that. In the current climate, you know, I think people love that family history and the backing of what the brand is, rather than just some conglomerate company kind of just taking this name that's had this long history and kind of trying to continue it. So the family aspect, I think, is very important to it. And, you know, you seem to be a great ambassador for that and wanting to continue that on.
Yeah, I just think it's really easy for a company to buy a distillery and kind of force out the people that really made it and put out 80 or 80 proof 4-year-old juice. That's what's going to make them the most money. Is a mass marketed, you know, 80 proof 4-year-old product. And I just think it's important to have people like us or the nose over at Jim Beam or you know, there's the family that's making Angel's Envy. There are a lot of families involved, and even if it's not a family, there's a lot of real bourbon people like Harlan Wheatley over at Buffalo Trace, or Brent at Four Roses, Brent Elliott. They're bourbon people. So while there might be a big Japanese or French or Italian company that's they're on the board of directors or they're the CEO, that there is you know, Jimmy talks about it's simple country folk that make this at the distillery level. They're the union folks that are making it. So it's important to have the quote unquote simple country folk, I think, in the company still that has a voice that can say, you know, hey, I don't think this is a good idea, or hey, I think this is awesome. Because one thing that Jimmy talks a lot about, he always wants our employees to be able to afford and enjoy our product. And that's something I really am proud of about Wild Turkey is most of even our really good stuff like that single barrel, it's like a $40-something bottle, at most $50, you know? And that's something I'm really proud of that we do and that Campari's allowed us to do is we put out 10-year-old small batch stuff at like $30, you know, when the trend tells us we should put it out at 75 and we should make the bottle fancy.
Right.
it's the Bruce Springsteen or John Mellencamp of bourbon. So
yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I used to love cigars. Now I work for Aaron, and I'm just a curmudgeon. Like so.
So Bruce, so the company that makes these Montecristo cigars, Altadis, didn't they just get bought by the Chinese there, Tim?
Yes, we did. Correct.
So maybe they'll watch the show and they'll listen to make sure they keep
That's right.
What Bruce is talking about. It's important that whenever these consolidations and these companies get bought, that they keep some cigar people in there.
There you go, China. If you're listening, so
they're listening.
No, but one thing I have to give credit to is our general manager of Tobacco USA is Javier. I mean, he had a vision, which Rafael was talking about. You know, working with the group of the Maestros. I'm sorry, where they took people that worked in different aspects of it. You know, of the factory to come together to. You know, from, you know, marketing, from box making, from, you know, tobacco fermentation to cigar rolling, from Honduras. You know, they had a group of the Maestro guys there, and adding Rafael in, it kind of was like a big pot that they stirred, you know, to make some of the cigars that, you know, we have now. And, you know, Jeff will attest to this. Rafael was Rafael's brand, the Asian rum Cuatro Nicaraguan, received the #1 cigar of the year last year. We had the #10 cigar of the year last year. We received, you know, with Rafael being our product development, also he's in charge of our marketing department now. He has a vision of doing things. And Rafael is, one thing about Rafael is he is about perfection, you know. And so, and you've seen what he's done and what we've worked with, you know. And I mean, we make great cigars for him, but I think he's like, you know, he's added a spice to it that's like took us to another level. So I have to definitely give him credit on that aspect.
Absolutely.
You all
You
correct
guys
me if
gotta
I'm
do it.
wrong, but I feel like in the cigar world, what kind of shines is what I'm talking about with us, and why I think it's a really good time to be in these kind of industries. There is really good, crazy, expensive, like once in a lifetime stuff, but there's so much good, affordable, but still premium products right now
Yeah.
that if you're a cigar smoker, if you're a wine drinker, if you're a bourbon drinker, it doesn't matter. There's so much good stuff out there. And some of the best stuff is, it really is affordable. It's approachable to your everyday smoker or drinker. There's really good stuff out there that really doesn't cost an arm and a leg.
True. Very
Bruce,
true.
you're right. I think even earlier, I'm thinking COVID-19 North Carolina pandemic and phase 1 of wherever we are. I think people really stuck to the brands that have been around for a while. They were the solid brands, and I think people relied on them. And I think Wild Turkey, I think that's one of those brands that people can connect with, and Tim, Montecristo is one of those brands that people can connect with, and there's continuity, and it's it's the McDonald's of the cigar world. Nothing against McDonald's, Tim. That was
No, not at all. No, I take that as a serious compliment.
Yeah.
If we all made
McDonald's
McDonald's,
cheeseburger.
we'd be doing real good.
You can't beat a McDonald's cheeseburger. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter.
You haven't had my FSG hamburgers yet.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to those.
Tim, this is what you got to do. You have to do a project called the unfermented leaf, and you got to put an unfermented leaf in the cigar. People are going to buy it, not because it's good, but people are going to buy it. I'm telling you.
I agree. No, I don't. Hey, man. I've been.
Don't pitch that idea. Don't use that.
I'll be with Altadis. It'll be 27 years in March, and I've seen a little bit of everything, man.
I bet you have.
So Seth, we already beat you to it because the FSG farm rolls are unfermented.
No, really?
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's just
cured. That's
tobacco.
it, right?
That's it. No fermentation.
I'm loving this. I got to get some of these.
They're fantastic. They are fantastic.
I think I've smoked them before, and I probably loved them too.
Yeah, we'll get you some.
All right, guys, we're getting to the end of our time. So I want to thank all of you for joining us for this fantastic conversation. Bruce, Tim, Jeff,
Pleasure.
Seth, and also Rafael, who had to leave us early. But it's been fantastic, guys. I can't wait for us to do this again. Looking forward, Jeff, to the next barrel pick. We'll get that. We'll get the Montecristo with the FSG in there. This would be a perfect pairing for the second round. I think it would be amazing. So thank you, guys.
We'll make it happen.
Absolutely. I want to thank everybody that tuned in and was watching us. And for those that didn't catch us live, they can always catch us on YouTube or the downloads on the podcast. So thank you guys again. And we'll thank everybody for tuning in and watching us.
Yeah, thank you all very much. Shout out to my favorite guy in Florida, Tim West, for helping me set this up. Anytime y'all want to do something like this, please reach out. This is fun.
Absolutely.
You got it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Gentlemen, thank you guys for having us. Greatly appreciate it very much.
All right.